Lieutenant Ilara Chen drummed her fingers against the control panel of her patrol vessel, the Swift Harbinger. Another uneventful patrol through the Cygnus Rift. 6 hours of watching nebula clouds swirl in hypnotic patterns against the backdrop of distant stars. The contested border region between Terran Concordat space and the territories claimed by the Galactic Council remained peaceful, too peaceful for Chen's liking. Another waste of fuel and rations, muttered Ensign Kaido from the sensor station. 3 years of patrols, and the most exciting thing we found was that smuggler hauling contraband Jovian whiskey. Chen smiled despite herself. Be careful what you wish for, Ensign. Peace is preferable to the alternative. Yes, Mom. Still, I enlisted for adventure, not tow. Kaido's complaint cut short as his console emitted a high-pitched alert. Lieutenant, gravitational anomaly detected at bearing 047, range 30,000 kilometers. Chen straightened in her chair. Classification: unknown, ma'am. Mass readings fluctuating wildly. It's like space itself is folding. The main view screen shifted to display the coordinates. What began as a pinprick of distorted starlight expanded rapidly into a shimmering oval-shaped distortion. Energy readings spiked across all bands. All stations, yellow alert. Tactical power-up defensive systems but keep weapons cold. Chen ordered. Protocol dictated she should retreat and call for reinforcements, but curiosity overrode caution. Helm, bring us to 10,000 kilometers. Maintain readiness for emergency translation. The Swift Harbinger glided forward as the anomaly continued expanding. Brilliant blue-white energy crackled along its perimeter. For a moment, Chen glimpsed what appeared to be stars in unfamiliar configurations through the distortion, a window to somewhere else. Energy surge, Kaido called out. Something's coming through. A massive silhouette pushed through the dimensional tear. First a pointed prow, then a midsection bristling with weapon emplacements, and finally a massive engine assembly. The vessel dwarfed the Swift Harbinger by at least 20 times. Its hull, a dark composite material interspersed with armored plating, bore the unmistakable lines of human military architecture, but unlike any current Concordat design. Magnify, Chen ordered, her voice barely above a whisper. The view screen zoomed in on the vessel's forward section. There, partially obscured by micrometeor impacts and scorch marks from ancient battles, was an insignia that sent a chill down Chen's spine. The crossed swords and starburst of Earth's pre-Concordat Space Force, with the designation TCS-117 beneath it. That's impossible, Kaido breathed. That's the Phantom Vanguard. Even the youngest Academy cadet knew the legend. The TCS Phantom Vanguard, humanity's most advanced dreadnought, had vanished during the Battle of Proxima Centauri 70 years ago. The ship, under Admiral Marcus Rivera's command, had been surrounded by the Vraxian fleet. Rather than surrender, Rivera had engaged the experimental main drive, and the massive warship had simply disappeared. Most historians believed it had been destroyed by a catastrophic drive failure. Yet here it was, materializing like a ghost from another time. Scan for life signs, Chen ordered. Scanning, but that whole composition is resistant to our sensors, replied the science officer, Lieutenant Park. I'm reading minimal power signatures. Wait. Power levels rising across all systems. Whatever hibernation mode it was in, the ship is waking up. Running lights flickered to life along the dreadnought's hull, illuminating battle scars and revealing the true scale of the vessel. Nearly 2 kilometers from bow to stern, the Phantom Vanguard represented the pinnacle of humanity's wartime engineering, a vessel built when survival against technologically superior aliens seemed impossible. We're being scanned, Kaido reported nervously. Open communications, all frequencies, Chen ordered. This is Lieutenant Ilara Chen of the Terran Concordat vessel, Swift Harbinger to unidentified warship. Please identify yourself and state your intentions. Seconds stretched into a full minute of silence. Then the communications array crackled. "This is the TCS Phantom Vanguard," came a voice using outdated communications protocols. The transmission quality was poor, distorted by encryption algorithms obsolete for decades. "Commander Nathan Drake, Executive Officer. Our systems are registering your vessel as utilizing Terran identification codes, but your designation is unknown to us. Please authenticate using Emergency Protocol Sierra 9 Tango." Chen exchanged glances with her communications officer, who shook her head. "That authentication protocol hasn't been used since before the peace accords." Chen leaned forward. "Commander Drake, this is Lieutenant Chen. Your authentication request is outdated. The current date is April 17, 2387. Silence stretched across the comm channel. When Drake's voice returned, it carried a note of disbelief. "Please repeat that date, Lieutenant." "April 17, 2387, Chen confirmed. "Commander Drake, the Phantom Vanguard disappeared 70 years ago during the Battle of Proxima Centauri. Where have you been all this time?" Another long pause. When Drake spoke again, his voice had hardened into military precision. "Lieutenant Chen, request immediate secure communication with Terran High Command. Priority ultraviolet. Authentication phrase. The clock strikes midnight when stars fall silent." Chen recognized the emergency override immediately, a phrase that would grant priority access regardless of rank or circumstance. Whatever had happened to the Phantom Vanguard *, its return was about to change everything. "Understood, Commander." Transmitting coordinates for rendezvous with Concordat forces, Chen turned to her first officer. "Contact headquarters. Tell them we found a ghost, and it's come home." The docking tube sealed with a pneumatic hiss as Lieutenant Chen led her boarding team onto the Phantom Vanguard *. Emergency lighting cast long shadows through corridors designed for a crew of thousands, but now standing silent as a tomb. Their magnetic boots echoed against metal decking, the sound amplified by the emptiness surrounding them. "Environmental systems are operational but minimal," reported Specialist Zhang, consulting her handheld scanner. "Temperature holding at 15 degrees Celsius. Artificial gravity at 92% nominal. The air is stale but breathable." Chen nodded, fighting the eerie sensation of walking through history. Military museums displayed holographic recreations of pre-Concordat vessels, but nothing compared to standing inside the real thing. A legendary warship thought destroyed before she was born. "Life signs?" she asked. "Faint readings, concentrated in Section D7, Zhang replied. "Consistent with cryostasis signatures." They navigated through the massive vessel, passing empty crew quarters and abandoned duty stations. Occasional personal items, a holophoto of a smiling family, a half-finished letter on an ancient datapad, a coffee mug still sitting on a console, testified to the crew's unexpected departure from normal operations. After 20 minutes of careful progress, they reached a reinforced bulkhead marked CRYOBAIALPK. Authorized DP personnel only. Commander Drake waited there with two security officers in outdated military uniforms, their expressions guarded but not hostile. "Lieutenant Chen," Drake acknowledged with a crisp nod. He was younger than Chen had expected, perhaps 40, with close-cropped gray hair and the focused gaze of someone accustomed to making life-or-death decisions. "Your credentials check out against what historical records we could access through limited communications. I apologize for the precautions, but our situation is unprecedented." "Understandable, Commander," Chen replied. "May we see your crew?" Drake hesitated, then nodded to one of his officers, who keyed a complex sequence into the security panel. The massive doors parted with a groan of hydraulics long unused. The cryobay stretched before them, a cavernous chamber filled with hundreds of preservation pods arranged in concentric circles. Status lights glowed a steady green on most units, though several displayed yellow caution indicators. Medical technicians in outdated uniforms moved among the pods, checking readings and making adjustments. 517 crew members in suspended animation, Drake explained. We maintained a skeleton crew of 20 for essential operations, rotating through 3-month active periods. When it became clear our situation wasn't temporary, we initiated long-term preservation protocols. Chen walked between the rows of pods, each containing a perfectly preserved human being, men and women who had served during humanity's darkest hour, now displaced from their time. Their faces peaceful in cryosleep, unaware that everyone they had known outside this ship was likely dead of old age. And Admiral Rivera? Chen asked. Drake led them to the center of the chamber, where a single pod stood surrounded by additional monitoring equipment. Through the frosted transparent cover, Chen could make out the features of the most celebrated naval commander in human history, Marcus Rivera, architect of the defensive strategies that had ultimately forced the Vraxian Dominion to the negotiating table. We're beginning revival procedures for command staff, Drake said. The Admiral first, then department heads. Dr. Nilsson estimates 4 hours until consciousness. I've notified Concordat Command, Chen replied. A medical frigate and diplomatic escort will rendezvous with us in 6 hours. I've been instructed to get answers if possible before they arrive. Drake's expression hardened. With respect, Lieutenant, we report to Earth Defense Command, not the Concordat. Whatever that is, the Admiral will brief your superiors when he's prepared to do so. Before Chen could respond, a medical technician approached urgently. Commander, the Admiral's vitals are strengthening faster than projected. He's beginning to regain consciousness. They hurried to Rivera's pod, where the status indicators had shifted from green to blue. The frosting on the transparent cover had begun to clear, revealing the face of Admiral Marcus Rivera more distinctly. His eyes remained closed, but his chest now rose and fell with stronger breaths. How is this possible? Dr. Nilsson murmured, checking the readouts. His metabolism should still be suppressed for another 3 hours at minimum. The Admiral's eyelids fluttered, then opened. Dark eyes, sharp and alert despite decades of cryosleep, immediately focused on the unfamiliar uniforms of Chen's team. His hand moved to the emergency release inside the pod. Wait, sir, Dr. Nilsson called out. The revival process isn't complete. Too late. The pod hissed open as Rivera pushed himself upright, moving with the deliberate care of someone accustomed to controlling their body through discomfort. His voice, when it came, was rough from disuse but commanding. Report, Commander Drake. His gaze never left Chen and her team. Admiral, we've emerged from phase shift approximately 70 years after activation. We're currently in the Cygnus Rift. This is Lieutenant Chen of the Terran Concordat. Rivera studied Chen with penetrating intensity. Concordat, not Earth defense. The political structure has changed, Admiral, Chen explained carefully. The Terran Concordat formed 30 years after your disappearance. Earth, Mars, and the outer colonies united under a single governmental structure following the peace accords. Peace accords. Rivera's voice remained steady, but his knuckles whitened as he gripped the edge of the pod. With the Vraxians. Chen nodded. The war ended 65 years ago. Humanity has established diplomatic relations with most major species, including the Vraxian Dominion. Rivera closed his eyes briefly, absorbing the implication that everything and everyone he had known was gone, transformed beyond recognition or dead. When he opened them again, they reflected not defeat but calculation. Lieutenant Chen, he said formally, I need to see everything that's happened since we left. And then, he glanced toward a secured door at the far end of the cryobay. I need to show you why we came back. The engineering bay of the Phantom Vanguard hummed with activity as Concordat specialists moved cautiously among technology both familiar and alien. Lieutenant Chen watched from an observation platform as engineers in protective suits examined what appeared to be a standard antimatter containment chamber, except it pulsed with colors that shouldn't exist in normal space. Incredible, murmured Captain Sato, the Concordat's leading expert on theoretical propulsion, who had arrived with the support fleet 6 hours earlier. If I'm reading these schematics correctly, they weren't just using dimensional folding for weapons. The entire propulsion system operates on principles we've only theorized. Admiral Rivera stood beside Chen, his weathered face betraying no emotion as strangers examined his ship's most classified systems. In the 24 hours since his revival, he had absorbed 70 years of history with remarkable composure, asking pointed questions about the peace accords, Concordat governance, and current military capabilities. Your scientists seem surprised, Rivera noted. Didn't dimensional physics advance during our absence? Not in this direction, Chen replied. After your disappearance, research into phase shift technology was abandoned as too dangerous. The official position became that the Phantom Vanguard was destroyed by drive failure. A tall woman with close-cropped silver hair approached them, moving with the confident stride of someone comfortable with her expertise. Dr. Imani Okafor, the ship's chief engineer, had been among the second group revived from cryostasis. They're like children discovering fire, she said, nodding toward the Concordat engineers. Brilliant children, but still fumbling with fundamentals. Rivera's expression softened slightly. Dr. Okafor modified the phase shift drive while we were. He paused, searching for the right words. Away. 3 subjective years of refinements. For us, Lieutenant Chen, this technology isn't theoretical. It's operational. Dr. Okafor gestured for them to follow. There's something you should see. She led them through a series of security checkpoints to a laboratory deep within the engineering section. Inside, a transparent cube approximately 2 meters across occupied the center of the room. Within it, a small metallic sphere hovered, surrounded by a shimmering field of energy. This is a quantum stabilization chamber, Okafor explained. The object inside is a prototype we developed during our time in phase shift. We call it a kinetic neutralizer. She tapped commands into a nearby console. A mechanical arm extended into the chamber, gripping the sphere and placing it into a testing apparatus. On a nearby platform, she placed an outdated sidearm, a heavy chemical projectile weapon from the war era. Observe, she said, activating the device. The sphere hummed to life, emitting a barely perceptible ripple through the air. Okafor aimed the weapon at a reinforced target plate and pulled the trigger. The weapon discharged with a thunderous report, but the bullet emerged from the barrel at walking speed, drifting lazily across the room before clinking harmlessly against the plate. Chen stared in astonishment. You've created a localized temporal field. Not temporal, Okafor corrected. Gravitational. The device selectively amplifies gravitational resistance against accelerating objects while leaving stationary matter unaffected. No conventional projectile weapon can function within its radius. No missile, no railgun round, nothing that relies on kinetic energy. A perfect defense, Chen whispered. One application among many, Rivera said. The same principles can revolutionize medicine. Imagine surgically precise gravitational fields that can manipulate individual cells without damaging surrounding tissue. Or construction, buildings assembled by workers who cannot fall, materials that can be precisely positioned regardless of mass. A commotion from the main engineering bay interrupted them. Chen's communicator buzzed with an urgent alert. Lieutenant, came the voice of her first officer. 3 diplomatic shuttles have docked without authorization. Ambassadors from the Galactic Council are demanding immediate inspection of the vessel under Article 7 of the Arms Limitation Treaty. Rivera's expression darkened. The Fraxians. And the Juxtar Imperium, the officer confirmed. They'd brought verification specialists. Chen turned to Rivera. Admiral, under the treaty, Council representatives have the right to inspect any military vessel of significant tonnage that enters contested space. We need tow. This vessel predates your treaties, Lieutenant, Rivera cut her off. I do not recognize their authority over this ship or its technologies. He turned to Dr. Okafor. Secure all prototypes. Lock down research decks. Wait, Chen insisted. Refusing inspection will create a diplomatic incident. The peace is fragile. Is it peace, Lieutenant? Rivera asked quietly. Or a 70-year ceasefire? Did the Vraxians suddenly develop respect for humanity, or did they simply find it more convenient to wait? Before Chen could respond, her communicator buzzed again. Lieutenant, Council representatives have bypassed security on Deck C. They're proceeding toward the engineering section, with Concordat escort. Rivera exchanged glances with Okafor, some unspoken communication passing between them. The engineer nodded and moved swiftly to a secured terminal, entering a complex sequence. Throughout the massive ship, bulkheads began to seal automatically, compartmentalizing the vessel. Emergency lights shifted to amber. What are you doing? Chen demanded. Protecting 70 years of work, Rivera replied calmly. Work that may determine whether humanity survives the coming century. He fixed Chen with an unwavering gaze. You have a decision to make, Lieutenant. The Concordat uniform you wear, does it serve humanity's interests, or has it become a comfortable compromise? Chen felt the weight of history pressing down upon her. Before she could answer, Dr. Okafor spoke from her terminal. Admiral, primary systems secured. But I'm detecting unusual communications activity from the Council vessels. They're transmitting encrypted bursts toward the Vraxian border. Pattern matches old Dominion military frequencies. Rivera nodded grimly. Just as we suspected. This isn't about treaty verification. He turned back to Chen. The real question, Lieutenant, isn't why we've returned. It's whether we returned in time. Override code Chen Alpha 940. Lieutenant Chen spoke firmly into her communicator. Security protocol suspension, my authorization. The amber emergency lights flickered, then returned to standard illumination as bulkheads began reopening throughout the ship. Admiral Rivera's expression remained neutral, but his eyes betrayed disappointment. You're making a mistake, Lieutenant. Perhaps, Chen replied. But it's my mistake to make. This ship appeared in Concordat space. That makes it my responsibility to prevent diplomatic incidents, at least until my superiors decide otherwise. 3 hours later, Chen stood in the Phantom Vanguard Situation Room, watching security feeds of Council representatives examining the vessel's outer hull systems. She had negotiated a compromise. Limited access to non-classified areas with Concordat security escorts. So far, the inspection had remained professional, if tense. You're wondering if you chose correctly, came a voice from behind her. Chen turned to find Commander Drake, Rivera's executive officer, studying the same feeds. Unlike the Admiral, Drake had spent most of his time since Revival learning about the modern political landscape rather than challenging it. Wouldn't you? She asked. Drake gestured toward a secure terminal. There's something you should see. He entered his command codes, accessing a restricted section of the ship's quantum data core. The holographic display shifted to show archival footage, surveillance recordings from before the Phantom Vanguard's disappearance. 3 weeks before the Battle of Proxima Centauri, Admiral Rivera received classified orders. Drake explained, bringing up a document bearing the highest security classification of the war-era Earth government. Operation Long Shadow. Chen scanned the document, her eyes widening. This authorized the Phantom Vanguard to intentionally disappear. Not exactly, Drake corrected. To preserve critical technologies and personnel if defeat seemed inevitable. The phase shift was our emergency protocol, but the Admiral had discretion regarding its use. The display shifted again, showing more documents, technical specifications, cultural archives, genetic databases. We weren't just a warship, Lieutenant. We were an insurance policy. Drake's voice softened. If humanity had lost the war, if Earth had fallen, the Phantom Vanguard would have emerged decades later, carrying the seeds of human civilization and the technologies needed to rebuild. Chen felt a chill run through her. But the war ended. Why stay hidden for 70 years? Drake hesitated. That's complicated. The phase shift drive malfunctioned, yes, but not in the way you might think. We found ourselves in a dimensional pocket where time flowed differently. What felt like 3 years to us stretched to 7 decades out here. And during those 3 subjective years, we discovered things. Drake accessed another file, a surveillance recording showing a meeting of alien officials. The translation overlay identified them as high-ranking members of the Vraxian Dominion Intelligence Directorate, dated 5 years after the peace accords were signed. The human containment protocol proceeds as planned, spoke the highest-ranking Vraxian. The biological vulnerability analysis is complete. When the time comes, targeted delivery systems can eliminate 97% of human genetic profiles within 16 standard cycles. Asterisk and their concordat. Asked another. Asterisk, a useful structure. It centralizes their governance, limits their military development, and maintains the illusion of partnership while we complete the necessary preparations. Asterisk. Chen felt the blood drain from her face. This is authenticated. Multiple verification protocols. Drake confirmed grimly. We intercepted these communications during brief sensor deployments outside the phase shift pocket. There's more. Years of surveillance showing Vraxian weapons development, bioweapon research targeting human DNA, and deep cover agents placed throughout concordat institutions. Chen sank into a chair, her mind racing. Everything she had believed about the peaceful galactic order of her lifetime suddenly seemed built on quicksand. The Admiral believed returning now would be premature, Drake continued. We planned to gather more intelligence, develop countermeasures, and emerge when we could conclusively prove Vraxian duplicity. But the drive's stability began deteriorating 6 months ago. It was return now or risk being trapped forever. Before Chen could respond, her communicator chimed. "Lieutenant," came her security chief's voice. "We have a situation. The Vraxian delegation is requesting access to the propulsion section. They're citing treaty provisions that don't actually exist. When challenged, they became insistent. I'm on my way," Chen replied, rising. She turned to Drake. "I need to see everything. All the intelligence you've gathered, all the technologies you've developed." Drake nodded. "The Admiral anticipated your response. He's waiting in the secure archives." As they hurried through the corridors, an alarm suddenly blared. "Security breach, Deck E," announced the ship's automated system. "Unauthorized access detected in weapons control." "That's impossible," Drake muttered. "Those systems are isolated behind quantum encryption." Chen's communicator erupted with urgent reports. Council observers attempting to access restricted systems throughout the ship. Security personnel finding sophisticated infiltration devices planted near critical junctions. They rounded a corner to find Admiral Rivera directing a response team, his expression grim but unsurprised. "It appears the Vraxians have shown their hand sooner than expected," he said, meeting Chen's gaze. "The question now, Lieutenant, is what the Terran Concordat will do about it." Chen straightened her shoulders, her decision made. "First, we secure this ship, then we find out exactly what they're looking for, and why they're so desperate to find it before we can reveal what we know." Rivera nodded, satisfaction evident in his eyes. "Welcome to Operation Long Shadow, Lieutenant Chen. 70 years delayed, but right on time." 3 days after the diplomatic incident aboard the Phantom Vanguard, Lieutenant Chen sat in Admiral Rivera's private briefing room, staring at reports streaming in from across Concordat space. What had begun as isolated communication outages had escalated to something far more concerning. "New Anchorage colony has missed 3 scheduled check-ins," Chen noted, highlighting the data point on the holographic display. "Arcturus mining outpost went dark yesterday. Proxima Research Station reports unusual signal disruptions." Rivera studied the star chart, his expression contemplative rather than alarmed. "The pattern is familiar. Vraxian infiltration tactics haven't changed in 70 years. The Admiral had been officially reinstated by Concordat Command, though not without controversy. Half the Concordat leadership viewed the Phantom Vanguard's return as a historical miracle. The other half saw it as a destabilizing complication to carefully balanced interstellar politics. Concordat intelligence attributes the outages to solar flare activity, Chen said, frustration evident in her voice. They've denied my request for reconnaissance drones 3 times. Politics, Rivera said dismissively. They fear confirming what we already know. Commander Drake entered, carrying a secure data module. The analysis is complete, Admiral. The transmission patterns intercepted from the Vraxian diplomatic vessels match known Dominion military control signals with 97% certainty. So they were coordinating something, Chen concluded. But what? And why now? I believe I can answer that, came a new voice. Dr. Okafor stepped through the doorway, accompanied by a junior engineer carrying what appeared to be a small satellite. The device, roughly spherical and a meter in diameter, featured an intricate array of sensors and a compact propulsion system, unlike standard Concordat designs. One of our phase-shift reconnaissance drones, Okafor explained, developed during our time in Dimensional Pocket, capable of controlled micro-shifts that render it effectively invisible to conventional sensors. Rivera nodded. You modified it for modern detection protocols. Completed an hour ago, Okafor confirmed. Ready for deployment. Chen studied the device. Even if it works, Concordat regulations prohibit unauthorized reconnaissance of sovereign territories. If we're caught, we won't be, Okafor stated with absolute confidence. And sometimes, Lieutenant, one must choose between following regulations and preventing genocide. The word hung in the air, heavy with implication. You're certain? Chen asked quietly. The bioweapon research we detected wasn't theoretical, Drake answered. Based on intercepted communications, they've moved to production stage. They're preparing for deployment, not development. Chen made her decision. What's the plan? 12 hours later, Chen found herself aboard a modified shuttle ostensibly conducting routine maintenance on navigation beacons near the Arcturus Junction. The official flight plan had been approved through standard channels, but their actual mission remained off all official records. Deploying reconnaissance drone in 30 seconds, reported the pilot, a recently revived Phantom Vanguard officer named Lieutenant Quan. Chen watched through the viewport as the maintenance bay opened. The drone drifted out silently, its surface momentarily shimmering before it seemingly vanished, not through conventional cloaking, but by partially shifting into another dimensional plane, becoming what Rivera had described as quantumly translucent to normal space. Drone active, confirmed Okafor over the secure channel from the Phantom Vanguard. Receiving telemetry. Estimated time to New Anchorage Colony, 43 minutes. The wait felt interminable. Chen reviewed contingency plans, mentally preparing explanations should they be challenged by Concordat patrols. Their position remained technically legal, if deliberately misleading. Contact. Okafor's voice crackled over the comm suddenly. Drone has reached New Anchorage perimeter. Transmitting visual feed. The shuttle's screen flickered to life, showing orbital imagery of the colony, a mid-sized settlement housing 3,000 civilians on a resource-rich moon. Chen felt her blood run cold at what she saw. The colony's defensive perimeter had been breached in multiple locations. Several structures showed damage consistent with precision strikes. In orbit, barely visible through sophisticated camouflage fields, hovered 3 vessels of unmistakably Vraxian design. Military configuration, Rivera noted, his voice steady through the communication link. Infiltrator-class tactical frigates, designed for covert operations, not diplomatic missions. The drone's sensors detected life signs concentrated in the colony's underground shelter complex, a smaller cluster of signatures, with biochemical markers identifying them as Vraxian, moved methodically through the administrative center. They're downloading the colony's databases, Chen realized, searching for information about the Phantom Vanguard. Survivors in the bunker complex, Rivera observed. The Vraxians aren't conducting extermination. This is intelligence gathering. Chen made an immediate decision. We need to extract those colonists. Agreed. Riverer responded without hesitation. Phantom Vanguard is altering course to your coordinates. Estimated arrival: 17 minutes. Maintain position and prepare for tactical insertion. As Chen began preparations, the drone's sensors detected a sudden energy surge from the Vraxian vessels. They're powering weapons, Oka forewarned. Target lock on the bunker complex. Chen realized with horror that the Vraxians, having obtained whatever intelligence they sought, were preparing to eliminate witnesses. 3,000 civilians would die while they watched helplessly. We don't have 17 minutes, Chen stated grimly. Rivera's response came instantly. Transmitting tactical package to your shuttle systems. Lieutenant Quan, execute stratagem Echo 7 upon receipt. Chen felt the shuttle lurch as new coordinates appeared in the navigation system. A precision jump that would place them directly between the Vraxian vessels and a colony. One shuttle against 3 warships. Quan questioned, though his hands were already implementing the course. We won't be fighting, Rivera replied with cold certainty. We'll be buying time. The Conquests council chamber hummed with tense voices as representatives from 17 species debated the evidence presented before them. Massive holographic displays showed footage captured by the phase shift drone. Vraxian vessels attacking the human colony, Vraxian commandos extracting data from colonial archives, and most damning, the attempted elimination of witnesses. Lieutenant Chen stood at parade rest beside Admiral Rivera, both still bearing minor injuries from the new Anchorage rescue operation. Their desperate gambit had succeeded beyond expectation. By deploying the shuttle's experimental gravitational disruptor, another Phantom Vanguard innovation, they had temporarily disabled the Vraxian vessel's targeting systems long enough for Rivera to arrive with the dreadnought and evacuate the colonists. The Vraxian Dominion categorically rejects these fabricated accusations, hissed Ambassador Threx, his scaled skin flushing deep crimson with agitation. These images could easily be manipulated. Where is this miraculous drone that captured them? Conveniently shifted into another dimension, perhaps. Chen observed the political theater with growing frustration. Despite irrefutable evidence, the council remained deadlocked. Traditional Vraxian allies, the methane-breathing Juxtar, and the crystalline hegemony, reflexively supported their denials. Others remained cautiously neutral, unwilling to risk disrupting established alliances. The Myriad Gestalt has analyzed the data signatures, countered Ambassador Lin, representing the collective consciousness that had traditionally maintained cordial relations with humanity. We detect no evidence of fabrication. Furthermore, our long-range sensors independently confirmed unusual activity in the Arcturus sector consistent with Vraxian military operations. Rivera leaned closer to Chen, speaking quietly. Politics hasn't evolved much in 70 years. They'll debate while worlds burn. A soft chime interrupted the proceedings as a new delegation entered the chamber. 8 articulated limbs carried each member of the group, representatives of the Arachnid Collective, notoriously reclusive philosophers who rarely participated in council affairs. The collective requests recognition, announced the lead delegate, her translator rendering her pheromone-based communication into standard speech. The chamber fell silent. The Arachnid Collective's neutrality was legendary, their participation potentially decisive. Ambassador Keep Lai of the collective approached the evidence display, compound eyes studying the footage with methodical precision. We have observed these proceedings with interest. The question before this body is not merely one of evidence authentication, but of philosophical integrity. She turned toward the Vraxian delegation. Ambassador Threx, the collective has independently intercepted communications from your military intelligence directorate. Would you prefer we share these intercepted communications with the council, or will you acknowledge what we all know to be true? The chamber erupted in murmurs as Threx's posture stiffened. The Vraxian conferred hurriedly with his aides before responding. The actions at New Anchorage, if they occurred as described, were undertaken by rogue elements within our military structure, specifically a faction known as the Directors. They operate without authorization from our civilian government. A convenient distinction, Rivera noted loudly enough for all to hear. Ambassador Keatley inclined her head. The collective proposes a compromise solution. If these actions truly represent unauthorized military adventurism, then the Dominion should welcome a joint investigative commission with full access to relevant command structures. Chen watched diplomatic maneuvering continue for another hour before the council recessed. As delegates dispersed, Ambassador Keatley approached them directly. "Lieutenant Chen, Admiral Rivera," she greeted them. "The collective wishes private discourse." They followed her to a secure meditation chamber designed for sensitive diplomatic exchanges. Once sealed, Keatley's demeanor shifted subtly. "What I share now comes not from the collective's official position, but from our deep space listening posts. We have detected unusual quantum resonance patterns emanating from within Vraxian territory, patterns inconsistent with known Vraxian technology." "What kind of patterns?" Chen asked. "Similar to your phase shift drive, but more sophisticated," Keatley replied. "Something is manipulating dimensional boundaries on a massive scale. And there is more. Communications intercepts suggest the Director's faction isn't merely militaristic. They appear to be receiving technological guidance from an entity they call the Architect." Rivera's expression darkened. "An outside influence." "Unknown," Keatley admitted. "But the linguistic patterns used to describe this entity differ significantly from standard Vraxian reference frameworks." A chime interrupted them as Chen's secure communicator activated. "Lieutenant," came Dr. Okafor's urgent voice, "we've completed analysis of the data recovered from New Anchorage. The Vraxians weren't just searching for information about the Phantom Vanguard *. They were looking for something called the quantum key." Chen exchanged glances with Rivera. "What quantum key?" "Unknown," Okafor replied. "But whatever it is, they believe we brought it back with us from the dimensional pocket." As they digested this information, a commotion erupted outside the chamber. Security alarms blared throughout the diplomatic complex. The door slid open to reveal Commander Drake, weapon drawn. "Assassination attempt against the Concordat Chancellor," he reported tersely. "Vraxian diplomatic credentials used to bypass security. The complex is locked down." Keatley's compound eyes flickered with rapid calculations. "This is not happenstance. The Directors are eliminating obstacles to military action." Rivera nodded grimly. "Lieutenant Chen, I believe we've run out of time for diplomacy. The Phantom Vanguard must deploy immediately to Vraxian space." "That would be an act of war," Chen protested. "No," Keatley interjected, mandibles clicking thoughtfully. "It would be reconnaissance in force. And the Arachnid Collective will provide coordinates to a location the Directors have worked strenuously to keep secret, a dimensional research facility operated by entities who are decidedly not Vraxian." The Phantom Vanguard hung in the darkness of deep space, its massive form silent and powered down to minimal life support. Lieutenant Chen stood on the observation deck, watching as final preparations for the dimensional fold were completed. Behind her, a mixed team of original crew members and Concordat specialists worked with focused intensity. "Dimensional fold calculations complete," reported Dr. Okafor from her station. "Target coordinates locked. A stellar manufacturing facility in the Vraxian home system. Designation Omega-17. Ambassador Keatley's intelligence places it in high orbit around the fourth planet." Admiral Rivera studied the tactical display, his expression contemplative. "The facility's shielding will prevent conventional detection until we're practically on top of it. We'll have perhaps 3 minutes before Vraxian defense systems respond. Which is why we're not using conventional insertion," Chen reminded him. The plan was audacious. Use the dimensional folding drive to place the Phantom Vanguard partially out of phase, rendering it effectively invisible while they gathered intelligence on the mysterious facility. "Fold drive at 97% charge," announced Commander Drake. "Ready on your order, Admiral." Rivera nodded. "Commence dimensional fold." Chen felt the familiar disorientation as reality seemed to ripple around them. The stars blurred momentarily before resharpening with subtly different positioning. The massive dreadnought had traversed dozens of light years instantaneously. "Fold complete," Okafor confirmed. "We are positioned 400,000 kilometers from target facility. Phase variance at optimal parameters. We are effectively invisible to conventional sensors." "Deploy reconnaissance drones," Rivera ordered. 4 of the specialized phase shift drones detached from the Phantom Vanguard's launch bay, accelerating silently toward the facility. Within minutes, they began transmitting data back to the ship. The Grand Council chamber of the Galactic Conquests had never hosted so many species simultaneously. Representatives from 27 civilizations filled the tiered seating, their differences in biology, culture, and technology momentarily set aside in the face of an existential revelation. Lieutenant Chen stood beside Admiral Rivera at the central podium, both wearing their formal uniforms. Rivera's an anachronism from a previous era. Chen's bearing the insignia of both the Concordat and the Phantom Vanguard *. Behind them, an honor guard composed of human, Braxian, and arachnid soldiers presented a unified front, something unimaginable mere weeks earlier. "The evidence cannot be disputed," Chen stated, her voice carrying throughout the vast chamber. "For centuries, an ancient species, who call themselves the progenitors, have manipulated our civilizations, orchestrating conflicts, guiding technological development, and ensuring we evolved along predetermined paths." The holographic display above showed data from the Phantom Vanguard's reconnaissance mission, enhanced by subsequent intelligence gathered by a coalition of species now awakening to the truth. Using quantum resonance technology, they've influenced critical decisions across our histories, Rivera continued. The Vraxian-human war wasn't a natural conflict. It was engineered to test weapons technologies and response patterns. The peace that followed wasn't diplomacy. It was a controlled experiment in cultural integration. Ambassador Threx of the Vraxian Dominion stepped forward, his scales now bearing the blue markings of the reformed government that had ousted the compromised director's faction. "My people were used as the progenitors' primary enforcers," he acknowledged, mandibles clicking with controlled rage. "Those we called the directors were the most heavily influenced by the quantum manipulation. They believed they were serving Vraxian interests while actually implementing alien directives." Ambassador Keat Lai of the Arachnid Collective joined them, presenting additional findings. "Our deep space observatories have identified 17 quantum resonance hubs throughout known space, each calibrated to specific neurological patterns of different species. The technology is subtle, not direct control, but influence. Nudging decisions, amplifying aggressive impulses in some cases, fostering complacency in others." The evidence was compelling. Historical analysis revealed patterns of inexplicable decisions, technological development suspiciously constrained along certain paths, and conflicts that served no logical purpose. All could be traced to periods of increased quantum resonance activity. "But why?" demanded the representative from the Myriad Gestalt. "What purpose does this manipulation serve?" Dr. Okafor stepped forward, activating a new holographic display, showing the intricate mathematics of dimensional physics. "The progenitors evolved beyond conventional three-dimensional existence millennia ago. They cultivate younger species as we might tend gardens, guiding our development toward predetermined outcomes. Based on recovered communications, they consider themselves guardians of universal stability. Cosmic zookeepers," Rivera added with undisguised contempt. A ripple of unease moved through the assembly as implications became clear. Centuries of history, wars fought, treaties signed, technological paths chosen, all influenced by unseen manipulators. "The revelation is disturbing," acknowledged the Juxstar representative, methane bubbling through his speech apparatus. "But what can we do against beings who operate between dimensions and have manipulated us for centuries?" Chen stepped forward. That's why the Phantom Vanguard is crucial. By accidentally discovering dimensional folding technology and then disappearing into a dimensional pocket for 70 years, we developed in isolation, free from their influence. The technologies we created offer protection against quantum resonance manipulation. The plan they presented was audacious, using modified versions of the Phantom Vanguard's dimensional folding technology. A joint fleet would simultaneously target all 17 quantum resonance hubs. Not to destroy them, which could have catastrophic consequences for civilizations dependent on their influence, but to neutralize them gradually, allowing organic development to resume naturally. This isn't about vengeance, Rivera emphasized. It's about freedom. The right of each species to determine its own destiny. The vote that followed wasn't unanimous. Change never is, but the coalition that formed transcended ancient rivalries. Vraxians and humans would serve side by side. The Arachnid Collective would provide tactical coordination. The Myriad Gestalt would adapt the protection technology for diverse biologies. 3 weeks later, Chen stood on the bridge of the Phantom Vanguard as the massive vessel prepared to lead the first joint species fleet in history. Beside her, Rivera studied the tactical display showing hundreds of ships in precise formation. Vessels that weeks ago might have fired upon each other without hesitation. Dimensional fold calculations complete, reported Dr. Okafor. All vessels report ready status. Rivera turned to Chen. Lieutenant, the honor is yours. Chen nodded, feeling the weight of history as she gave the order that would begin a new chapter for all sentient species. Commence Operation Unbound. Freedom begins today. As the Phantom Vanguard entered the dimensional fold, leading hundreds of ships from dozens of civilizations, Chen reflected on the irony. A warship built in humanity's darkest hour had become the key to liberation. A vessel hidden away as insurance against extinction now served as the vanguard of a new era, one where species would develop according to their own nature, not an imposed pattern. The ghost ship had returned not as a harbinger of war, but as a beacon of unprecedented cooperation. Whatever came next would be written by free minds across 1,000 worlds.